Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Leadership Lounge. If you haven't already subscribed on our YouTube channel, make sure you hit subscribe. And if you haven't followed yet on your podcast provider, make sure you hit follow. And we are powered by TDL, and we're bringing a like-minded community of future-focused leaders together. And we're going to add value by speaking to amazing people with amazing stories and experts in their field. So today we're speaking to Ian. How are you, sir?
Hello, Stuart. I'm very well, thank you.
Good. So I've met Ian in the last 6 months, a amazing person with a phenomenal black book and amazing background, and we are definitely stay connected for the foreseeable future, let's say. So without going into too much detail, I'm going to get you introduce yourself. So as I hit the 20-minute timer, for the people who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and a little bit about your background. Off you go.
Okay. Oh, goodness me. A lifetime in a few seconds. So I am the owner and founder of the Sporting Club. The Sporting Club is a members club. It's a business club, but it's called the Sporting Club because my whole working life has been involved in sport. Sport is the world's greatest common denominator. Sport brings everybody together more than anything else. And it doesn't judge you on your age or your wealth or your background. It judges you on whether you share the same love for the same sport or the same person. And the reason why I came up with the idea, and we're all over the country, London, Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, the Northeast, and expanding rapidly after 3 years of not ideal circumstances, otherwise known as a pandemic, is because most of my working life, I've been a multimedia, I've been a national and international sports writer, journalist, author. I'm looking up at my bookshelf now, 23 books that I have written of varying degrees of success. 1 or 2 have been a bit average, 1 or 2 have been bestsellers. Broadcaster, loads of TV, loads of radio. I had a show on TalkSport up until a couple of years ago. And I'm also surprisingly an in-demand event host where I particularly interview people. We had a big event last week in London where I had Sir John Major, to Trevor McDonald and David Gower on the stage in separate interviews. And there's my point in a sense. It wasn't political. It was all about their love of sport. So now I'm bringing people together like your good self. We're matching people, creating business for people all around the power of sport.
Amazing. And I must say, that's why we're connected, because I am a member of the Sporting Club, and people who know my background, I love sport. So it's a great bringing together of people, of passions, and it's phenomenal. The rooms and the people, you're so right that it brings people together and it transfers a lot of skills.
And the thing about sport, I was just coming down my stairs and I've got these various panels of me doing lots of crazy things. I've done quite a few crazy things in my time.
I was going to come on to that.
Well, run with the balls in Pamplona, done the Cresta Run, the world's most dangerous toboggan run. I mean, I've signed so many waivers, but it's a challenge. I like to be challenged. I like to live. The greatest danger in life, and you would know this, Stuart, with your background, is never experiencing danger. We got one shot at this, so give it a go, guys. Give it a go. Do some things. Have some stories to tell. When it's all over, you may not be deliriously happy about it, but if you can sit back and go, well, you know what? I've squeezed every last drop I can out of this thing called life. That's all you can do. So I'm enriched with my experiences. I mean, you've met me a few times. I'm a pretty positive person, aren't I? Because
yeah, definitely.
Because I'm enjoying life. I'm making the most of life. And I think the other points I wanted to make about sport, it's not just a game, sport. Sport is much more than that. It's health, it's fitness, it's mental health. It's learning how to win graciously and how to lose. It's learning to get the learnings out of failure, as we all have. The analogies between sport and life are identical. And the reason, and of course, team sports as well, where you're totally dependent on the person next to you and where you have a collective responsibility. It's not just about you. And this is why I use predominantly famous sports stars as my guests whenever we do our lunches and our dinners. It's because when they tell their stories, I'm not, again, you would know this, Stuart, I'm not massively into tell me why you used your right foot to score that goal, or you hit a volley rather than a half volley on the tennis court. I don't care. It's all about their mindsets. And I've hung around the greatest sports people on this planet for 30 years, literally. And what makes them different from everybody else is not their skills. It's a given they've got skills. The world's full of wasted talent, by the way, full of wasted talent. It's the top 6 inches. It makes them stand apart from anybody else. And you can put them in the same room. And even though they may come from different countries with different religions and different socioeconomic backgrounds, they would gravitate towards each other because they recognize they are the same human being. I once did a lunch with Sir Steve Redgrave, and this member, who shall remain nameless, said, I'm not really into rowing. I went, okay, let me just explain something to you. This man won 5 Olympic gold medals in 5 separate Olympics over 20 years. He was 40 when he won his last one in one of the most grueling sports you can possibly be part of. And he earned hardly any money for doing it. So it wasn't about the money. It was about the winning. And this guy went, yeah, no, I know. But it's still rowing. And I said, hold on. For the last 15 years of those 20 years, this man had colitis, Crohn's disease, and type A diabetes. So what does that tell you? Number one, he's a serial winner. Number two, that he's built up a no excuses environment, because no CEO in the world wants to know why you didn't do something. And number three, whatever was thrown at him, and in his case, everything, he found a way. And I said to my member, are you seriously telling me that's about rowing? Because I'm telling you that's about life.
Yeah.
And he went, yeah, you're right. He brought 3 guests. And whilst I was speaking to Steve, in the corner of my eye, I could see this guy. He was making copious notes. And at the end of the lunch, he came up to me. He said, that's one of the most inspiring, motivational afternoons I've ever had. I went, there we go. I rest my case. And that's why it's called the Sporting Club. And that is why I've gone around the world prior to becoming a grown-up and running a business. I've only been a grown-up for about 4 years, by the way. Going around the world, just interviewing some of the top sports stars. It's not because you're a sports star, I'm a fan. It's because they are extraordinary human beings.
Yeah.
And their skill set absolutely can transist over into life. And whatever you need to win in sport, and there's a lot of blown up, magnified failure in sport. But one of my great learnings is you never fail. It's just another stepping stone. It's a stepping stone to ultimate success.
So let me come back round to your experiences, because as you were talking then, I was chuckling to myself, because I'm a massive sporting fan, and I got into where I got to because I was jack of all trades, master of none. I kind of really good at picking skill up. So I've got an appreciation of loads of different sports. And for example, I've not been to an F1 yet, and I would like to have the appreciation of how fast they're going. So I'm really analytical. I really love both elements of the hard skill and the soft skill, etc. So I would like to go and watch. But you sir, you've been there, done it, got the t-shirt. So an example of running the indoor 60 meters next to athletes, to polo on the back of an elephant, to actually training with a professional rugby team. What are some of the things that stood out for you that you really learned from those sort of getting there in the ring as such with all these professionals? What was the experience that you came away, and yes, it was for journalism, yes, it was for the TV, but what did you come away and go, that really surprised me, whether like I wasn't expecting that, or that was, does that make sense? So which one would you choose that you learned most from?
I can't choose one, because I learned something from
I'll give you a couple.
from all of them. You said in the ring, as it were. I actually did get in the ring.
I know you did, yeah.
With Roy Jones Jr., who was the best pound for pound boxer in the world at the time. He was 3 weeks away from fighting defending his world light heavyweight boxing title. He went on to become heavyweight champion as well, having previously been super middleweight champion and middleweight champion. And I did 3 rounds with him, which was, I didn't just rock up. I spent 6 months learning to box in a East London gym, good old, muck and sawdust, typical boxer's gym. And it was absolutely horrific. It was absolutely horrific. The guy just wouldn't stop punching me, funnily enough. And it was horrendous. And at that point, I was writing a book. You see, it was one of my chapters in Playgrounds of the Gods. That's one of the reasons actually why it was a bestseller, because people couldn't believe I did that. Couldn't believe I did that. And there's pictures of me at the end. I'm covered in my own blood all over my face. And what does that tell you? Well, it tells me I'm very determined to do the very best I can. I'm like that with the sporting club as well. You'll know 1 or 2 people, and if something's not right, I'm not happy, because there's no excuses for it. And I guess it showed how determined I was, but also how powerless I was. And so the full gamut of emotions were experienced, from anger. I was getting angry, but I was getting even angry because there was nothing I could do. I was frightened, but it was exhilarating as well. It was absolutely exhilarating. And the guy came up to me after, he actually came up to me after 1 round, because he thought it was a 1-round fight. And I said, no, it's 3 rounds. And as soon as I said that, why have I said that? And he went back to his corner and came back. He was in the mood then, so he was just pounding me. But it's, it's one I talked about how, when it's your time, when your time is up, you must have some stories to tell. And that's one of the stories. The rugby you talked about, I was a substitute for the Springboks against Ireland at Loftus Versfeld in Pretoria. And, they were world champions. And for them, again, it wasn't a sport, it was a religion, it was a way of life. It meant everything for them to wear the green and gold. And I was lucky enough to, well, I was going to say post-apartheid. I obviously wouldn't have done it pre-apartheid, but post-apartheid, and it was a joyous place to be. And the power of sport, the joy in people's faces, the fact that Mandela so cleverly used sport and turned to rugby, the Afrikaner sport, the white Afrikaner sport, his biggest enemy, and turned to them and embraced them, using the power of sport to do so, was absolutely amazing. The 60-meter sprint you referred to, embarrassingly, that was live on BBC's Grandstand.
Yeah, it brought back memories for me for BBC Grandstand.
Yeah, BBC Grandstand, and I was up against it was the Norwich Union Grand Prix, so it was a really big event, and there were 2 Olympic gold medalists alongside me, and then me. Now the thing is, Stuart, okay, all these things, I was one of those guys. I was in the school first team for everything. I played county under-18s at 3 or 4 sports. I was, as you've just said, a jack of all trades. I was pretty good at public level. At public level, I was pretty good. And I wanted to represent the person in the street, the lads on the sofa with the beer, going, "Oh, how did he miss that? How did he drop that? I would have done that." And the gulf between me, pretty good sporting member of the public, and a professional was massive, absolutely massive. I couldn't do it though. I couldn't get away with it unless they could see that I could play all these sports. I was 12th man for Australia, the Australian cricket team, with Shane Warne and the War brothers and Glenn McGrath and all those people. They had to see that I could play rugby or play cricket enough to get away with. Otherwise, I'd get no respect at all. They think I was just wasting their time. And then the second thing I had to do was to take the pain. So I remember when I walked into the Springboks dressing room, the Leicester Tigers I played for as well, for another book, In Your Dreams, which was the follow-up to Playgrounds of the Gods. Anyway, number one, they could see I could play, but number two, they could see that I could take a hit and not moan and not whinge and just get up. And it took a day and a half for the Springboks. And I knew this, I had enough experience to know this. You don't go into the South African dressing room, "Hey guys, I'm English and I'm a journalist." That's not the best way to start.
No.
So just say, "Hi guys, yeah, I'm just doing this book. Yeah, just mucking." And after a day and a half, when I did everything they did and took everything they did and got hit and hurt so many times and kept getting up, they started just coming up to me and shaking my hand and saying, think what you're doing is awesome, and we're here to help. So you need to do that. You need to break the ice. But I mean, I've had so many. You're talking about leadership, okay? And leadership in sport forms many shapes and guises. But you know, some of the greatest leaders in sport absolutely could be MDs of companies. I remember Eddie Jones when he came over. He was my first ever lunch guest, and that was when he was really good. I mean, you can't be a manager of any sports team for too long. But he spoke, and I had a number of major CEOs and chair people, the COOs in the room, and they all came up to me afterwards and said that guy could run our business easily. And that goes back to my points about transitional skills. You know, Martin Johnson, who I'm interviewing in a couple of weeks, it's 20 years ago that they won the Rugby World Cup. Martin Johnson was your sort of leader. He wasn't Churchillian with his speeches, but he absolutely was the first man out of the trench. And, you know, I coined a phrase, which is the rest of that England team would run through a Martin Johnson shaped hole in the wall to follow him. He's already gone. He's created the hole, and they're following him. So, you know, leadership is you see it all the time in sport. You know, you've got to as the captain of the team, you've got to bring people down. You got to bring people up. You've got to create a collective. You've got to leave the egos at the door. They've all got to be aiming at the same final goal, and that's why, again, sport and the power of sport is so much more than just a game.
So how is that? Obviously, you've got your step into business now. How's all your experience? Like, how would you say your leadership has evolved, changed? Where would you put yourself on the leadership spectrum?
Well, I'm constantly learning. You know, I've got some very, very strong attributes, and like all of us, some weaknesses as well. The attributes are, which I think are really important, is my drive, my energy, my passion, my work ethic, and anybody who knows me well will tell you that. Anybody who's got to know me will tell you that. And the fact that, you know, I'm not as young as I used to be, but I still have the same energy and joie de vivre, zest for life. I'm told, I'm not really aware of it. I'm just being me, but I'm told that rubs off on people, and it helps. And the thing I really like about the sporting club is it's not some kind of a faceless organization. You know, we all know each other pretty well, and you know, the members, you're one of them. They actually want to help. They actually want to help the business grow and evolve and be part of the journey. Feel as if they're actually part of this expanding family. You know, weaknesses. I think my biggest weakness I found is that I expect everybody to be like I am, and so and I will remind you, I've only been running a business for 4.5 years. Prior to that, I was just swanning around the world doing my thing. And it's just naivety that you expect everybody to. They say they're going to do something. That's it, isn't it? Well, clearly not. You know, the sort of delusional, self-delusional antics of some of the people I've come across who think they've done a good job, and they haven't. Has been a little bit of a shock to me. I've got a lot better at it now than I used to be. And
so
also,
can I pick up on that? Because that is one of the things that a lot of people, like I found that in talking to a lot of CEOs, a lot of people, it's easier because of my expectation management of standards, and I'll just do it myself. So how have you sort of moved in the direction of making that a little bit better?
Well, by being a bit harder on people, right, to be honest, because I mean, I haven't even, you know, if you ask me to do something, you say, oh, shall we contract up? You don't have to, it's done. I mean, that's how I am. It's done. If you want to shake my hand, that's my contract. And would it to be a lovely world if we could shake hands and that's the contract. And so I have made the incorrect assumption a few times that people are just going to do what I've told them to do, and they've said they can do it, and then they haven't. So anyway, sadly, it forces you to become a little bit harder and a little bit less accepting. But for us to go where we're going to go, you've got to remember we had we launched 18 months before COVID, and I sat there in my Mayfair club with no guests, no events, no members, nothing, and quite a bit of my hard-earned personal money put into this. And the old tumbleweed was blowing across the blowing across the room, and that's literally how it started. So we did after 18 months. London was really beginning to go well. We'd opened up in Manchester. That was beginning. We did quite a few events. And then the COVID handbrake came up. And, number one, I made sure everybody was paid who was part of my organization, except myself. You've got to put yourself last. And number two, we were very positive throughout COVID, not in a false way, but in a genuine way. We opened up other clubs in Leeds, in Liverpool, in Birmingham, in the Northeast. We did loads of stream shows. Whenever there was a window of opportunity, do you remember when there was like a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and then after a few weeks it disappeared again? We did live events as well whenever we could. But obviously we had no help from the government at all. It was incredibly challenging. But I always use the power of perspective, Stuart. Perspective is very, very, very important, okay? Before you start beating yourself up too much or feeling sorry for yourself, put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Now, there are a million examples, but one example was my cousin, who was a year older than me, so no age. On the very day that lockdown was announced, she was diagnosed with motor neuron disease.
Wow.
And it took her 15 months to pass away. And obviously towards the end, it's not great. So that's it, really. I have no right at all ever to feel a bit, COVID's being a bit tough. It is what it is. You're here to be challenged. When it's going well in life, enjoy it. When it's not going well in life, put your head down and get through it. And that's what we had to do. A lot of people, sadly, and I mean genuinely sadly, across the board, but certainly in sort of the hospitality, the events area, collapsed. And I'm not surprised as well. We came through it. I think we're stronger for the experience. I learned a lot in that time. It gave me an opportunity to stand back and have a really good look at what was working, what wasn't working, where I was spending my money well, where I was wasting my money. And in that sense, COVID was a positive experience. The negative was obviously it knocked us right back as in terms of the accounts, the business, the membership lost loads of members because they either retired or they were relocated or they were kicked out of their businesses. Some unfortunately passed away through COVID. But it is what it is. Luckily, or I don't know whether it's lucky or not, we've worked very hard. We've had an amazing year so far this year. We're into 4 months now, 5 months, coming to 5th month. We've had a fantastic year this year. Thank goodness, because for 3 years it's been 3 years it's been running up and down an escalator.
Exactly. So, Ian, that's 20 minutes, just a little bit over. But what a great way of finishing it. You are definitely on a trajectory of positive direction, great people, great organisation. Obviously, that's one of the reasons I was honed in on the sporting club. It's everything I love: business, sport, and some of the people in the room are so willing to sort of share stories, help, and that's part of it. Ladies and gents, if you're interested in the sporting club, make sure you reach out to me, or we'll have all the links to the sporting club in the show notes of the podcast. And that's us this week. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you follow us on your podcast provider. And as always, I always ask on our social media platforms and posts, make sure you tell us your takeaways from this episode, how you can relate, and what you're going to implement onwards. Ian, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye.